You're tuned into the hottest paranormal life show on YouTube, Into the Fringe, where we discuss lost civilizations, UFOs, cryptids, unsolved mysteries, megalithic structures, extraterrestrials, interdimensional portals, time skips, and more. Don't change that channel, because now you are leaving the mainstream and entering into the fringe.
Greetings, followers. It is I, Cardinal Sin, and I would like to welcome you to episode 39 of Into the Fringe. And tonight our guest is Don Ecker, who is a researcher, writer, communicator currently living in the Los Angeles area, serving as the former director of research and media liaison for Ufo Magazine for 20 years. Ecker is an internationally renowned investigator of the UFO phenomenon. A former law enforcement officer and criminal investigator with over 10 years' experience, he brought legitimacy to a field that has for years suffered being painted with a fringe brush. He has written numerous articles for the definitive U.S. UFO publication Ufo Magazine, as well as articles for international publications, the UK's 40 Times, Omni, the CompuServe system, and the Paranet computer database. Ecker first became interested in the UFO question in 1966, when along with several other people, he was witness to a sighting of the Enigma. After graduating from high school in 1968, Ecker attended college for 1 year and then enlisted in the United States Army. He was selected for the elite Army Security Agency, where he volunteered for special operations. He served in Southeast Asia for 26 months, was wounded twice, decorated, and then returned to the U.S. He returned to college for another year, then applied to his hometown police department, where he became an officer. In 1986, while helping a member of the department's SWAT team, Ecker was wounded, which led to his retirement. While recuperating, he started to research and write on the UFO mystery. As a criminal investigator in 1982, he had been leading an investigation of several cattle mutilations, which Ecker later discovered were somehow connected to the UFO mystery. In 1989, during the International MUFON Conference in Las Vegas, Ecker presented a paper on his research. He has appeared numerous times on Larry King Live and has been utilized repeatedly as an expert commentator and technical advisor for Hard Copy, A Current Affair, Sightings, and Encounters. During a recent anniversary of the Roswell incident, he was interviewed on Entertainment Tonight and Extra. Ecker was a featured speaker at Nevada's dedication of the extraterrestrial highway during a premiere of Independence Day in 1996. Ecker has been broadcasting about UFOs and the paranormal since before Art Bell, including UFOs Tonight, Strange Days, and Dark Matters. Ecker has also been a guest on well over 1,000 talk shows around the country. He was a consultant for the Fox television program Encounters and appeared on Extra in connection with the film Independence Day, and was on Entertainment Tonight in connection with their show Paranormal Borderline. He has also appeared on Talk America, the Sci-Fi Channel's Anti-Gravity Room, and the Discovery Channel's Cyberlife. Ecker brings important historical knowledge to the study of the phenomenon and is true to his word and ideas. In 1991, he broke one of the biggest UFO stories of the year, investigating the 1988 Soviet unmanned probes to Mars, Phobos 1 and 2. Ecker uncovered an amazing story of the Phobos 2's apparent encounter with a huge unknown and the probe's ultimate disappearance. He was able to secure a photograph of the unknown from the Soviet Glazkosmos Space Agency. He was asked to appear on Hard Copy and Larry King to talk about this incident where he revealed the photograph for the first time. In 1992, Ecker brought to public attention the amazing story of STS-48, the Discovery Shuttle mission photographing UFO enigmas in Earth orbit, and the drastic maneuvers the unknowns took when something appeared to shoot at them. Ecker was a police officer and investigator with over 10 years' experience and former MUFON State Section Director and investigator. He has written articles and been published in numerous national and international publications. He has also been a resident book reviewer for Ufo Magazine, where he has displayed a critical and insightful in-depth analysis of various new works in the UFO field. In 2014, Ecker was hired as a research producer for Robert Kivit's special Aliens on the Moon, The Truth Revealed. In this special, Ecker presented photographs of what can only be artificial objects on the moon, which he found in the NASA archives. Ecker continued PR and personal appearances for Paramount's film Fire in the Sky and 20th Century Fox's Independence Day. He was also asked to sit on the panel being held in connection with the opening of the renamed Highway 375 to the extraterrestrial highway that straddles Nevada's legendary Area 51. Along with stars from the film and Nevada Governor Bob Miller, Ecker was asked to lend his expertise to the project. Ecker has addressed the UFO mystery in domestic and international lectures. He has spoken in Vienna, Austria at their first international symposium, in Sheffield, England at the Bufora Conference in 1997, the Mutual UFO Network in Las Vegas, the UFORM Society in LA, and has done speaking engagements, radio and television throughout the United States. He recently completed a great novel, in my opinion, titled Past Sins, that is published by Gateway Publishing. The novel is currently under consideration by a major production house for a movie or television series. Welcome back, Don Ecker, to Into the Fringe.
Well, Cardinal Sin, it's once again a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
The pleasure is all mine, my friend. I do want to ask if we'll be doing any giveaways of autographed UFO magazines, or if we should stick to Into the Fringe T-shirts instead.
I have issues that I can be more than happy to contribute. Sure.
You have issues.
Yeah, well, I have that too.
But we all have issues.
Yeah, I have issues of UFO Magazine. I can contribute another 3.
Okay, great. So if you want to contribute 3 and autograph those for our audience, I'll go ahead and kick in a shirt or 2, and we'll just have everybody wins giveaway.
Okay, very good.
Let's check out who's here. Antiderivative Jill says, hello, Don Ecker. Of course, Darius Munchausen is in the house. And we have Canadian Spider-Man. And Sherry is here. Welcome, Sherry. PCAT is here. Says, hey, Cardinal, hope all is well. All is well. Thank you. Darius says, welcome back, Mr. Ecker.
Thank you.
Carol's Cookies is here. Sliders Fan Blog is here. Looks like it's going to be a great show. So, Don, let's dive right into it. I think the last time you were on the show, we didn't get too in-depth on your research into lunar anomalies. Tell us, what's some of the stuff on the moon that isn't supposed to be there?
Well, of course, you recognize and realize I personally have never been to the moon.
Oh, yeah. Not that I know of.
Right. Not that I know of either. But I guess you can say my fascination with lunar phenomena actually goes back to about 1963 or 1964. I was just a youngster then, and I had been begging my parents for a telescope, okay, for Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
And Christmas came, and as it turned out, they had ordered a telescope, but it didn't get there. It didn't get there actually until almost the new year. And when it finally arrived, I got to tell you, I was jazzed, man. Now, I'm originally from the East Coast. I live in LA now, but I was originally from Pennsylvania. And of course, Pennsylvania gets a lot of winter weather, a lot of snow, a lot of chill. But that didn't make a difference to me. The night that I had that thing put together, I took it outside in about 6 inches of snow, set it up, and for the very first time, I looked at the moon through a telescope. And Cardinal Sin, I got to tell you, man, I was literally blown away. I was gobsmacked, okay? And I guess that's where my fascination really developed. Now, during those years, I was introduced to some authors like Frank Edwards, John Keel, and some others.
You know,
and I was fascinated.
My first UFO book, I think, was Flying Saucers Serious Business, which I believe is a really good first book for anybody to read.
Well, some of those books that I had read talked about lunar phenomena, which really intrigued me. Now, life went on. I was in high school. In 1966, I had my UFO sighting, which really blew me away, but I didn't put all these dots together until later, okay? So I go to school, I go to college, I ended up going to the Army. I came back, and it was in the 70s that a guy by the name of George Leonard wrote a book, and it was out, and it disappeared almost as quickly as it had appeared, called Somebody Else is on the Moon. Now, at the time, I was not aware of it. Actually, I didn't really become aware of it until the late 1980s. And by then, I was involved in UFO investigations, and I interviewed a guy that came on my first radio show about lunar phenomena, and George Leonard. He turned me on to George Leonard. Well, I found a copy of the book, and I read it. And, buddy, I was, once again, gobsmacked. This guy was a science writer, had an in with some scientists at NASA during the Apollo program. And of course, the Apollo program was the program where we ended up landing astronauts on the moon. Well, I started doing some real in-depth research into this because, look, I knew there was a huge cover-up going on from the government. Now, whether NASA was involved overtly, covertly, or even unawareedly into a cover-up, NASA always dismissed and poo-pooed the UFO topic, even though they were in NASA's face. There were UFOs. My God, the first lunar landing, Apollo 11, they were followed. And later this came out okay, by none other than Buzz Aldrin, that they were tracked all the way to the moon by something that could not have been what NASA claimed it probably was, which was part of the booster rocket. Well, then there were a lot of rumors and stories about what they may have witnessed once they touched down. Mm-hmm. So all of this just had me entirely fascinated. And as a matter of fact, I discovered, and today it's common knowledge for anybody that has followed Apollo, that the first astronauts that went to the moon were actually, are you ready for this? Armed. They had firearms.
Pack and heat. Yeah.
On board. That's correct. Now, how did I determine that? Well, I was told it by somebody that allegedly had been in the know. So I called up NASA and I talked to their public spokespeople. And at first they didn't want to admit it, but they finally did, yes. And when I asked them why would the astronauts go to the moon with carrying 45 caliber automatic pistols, which incidentally is what they had. And I got this cockamamie story. Well, you know, we were afraid that if they were coming back or something happened and their space capsule landed in the jungle, well, they would have a way to defend themselves. And I said, land in the jungle. Okay. Because at that time, if you know anything about our space program, we always landed in the ocean. Okay? The capsule was not available, nor was it capable to land on terra firma, on firm land.
The Russians did bump downs, but we didn't. We always did splash downs.
Exactly. So anyway, that never made sense. Now, you had mentioned that I was the research producer on Bob Kvyat's Aliens on the Moon, The Truth Revealed. Back in, as a matter of fact, it was on the anniversary, July the 20th, when the Sci-Fi Channel aired that. And there's another story about that in itself that I'll be happy to relay.
Sure.
But I want to get this out. Buzz Aldrin was the second human being in history to step out on the moon. Okay? He immediately followed Neil Armstrong, who, of course, was the first human being to step down on the lunar surface.
Right.
Aldrin, well, he knows where a lot of the quote-unquote bodies are buried.
Right.
But he ain't talking.
And over the years, he's made some cryptic comments.
Well, actually, Neil Armstrong was the guy that made the really cryptic comments. But he's gone now.
Uncovering the layers of truth.
Exactly. So anyway, I was interviewed, and then Buzz Aldrin was interviewed. I had brought in to the studio some of the lunar photographs that I had uncovered. One of them clearly showed a huge pipe running through a crater. I discovered that. I found that. And you can follow it on the lunar surface. It goes over the edge of like a cliff. And it's got a really odd attachment on the end of the pipe.
I remember. I saw the special. It definitely not natural, very artificial looking.
Well, here's the funny part. Buzz Aldrin is sitting there, and the producer wanted to get Aldrin's comments on several of these photographs. He brought them over to Buzz, set them down, and Aldrin looked away. He totally refused entirely to even look at those photographs. He refused. He didn't want to talk about the moon. And hey, we're on the anniversary of the Apollo 11 touchdown, 2014. That was
correct me if I'm wrong. That was the anniversary when the only machine that could play the tapes that they made went missing, that they'd stored and kept clean and working, made sure they knew where it was, and then on the 40th anniversary, no one could find it, right?
Right. Well, the only thing that Buzz Aldrin did want to talk about was Mars. He wanted to talk about that obelisk or whatever that strange structure is on the moonlet of Phobos.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, it cast a shadow that I think made it look like it was several miles high. Yeah.
I don't know what in the heck it is, but there it was. But as far as the moon, the number 2 human being that was actually on the moon didn't want to talk about it. Now, Cardinal Sin, that was strange. Weird. But anyway, to get back to Lunar Anomalies, when I found out about George Leonard's book, and I got a copy, I began reading that. And I'm out here, I'm not actually very far from JPL. Okay.
Jack Parsons Laboratory.
Yeah. So, to give you an idea, and although this in itself has nothing to do with the moon, but it does Mars, one of the scientists that works at JPL was a neighbor of a good friend of mine, Dwight Schultz, you may know from the A-Team, Star Trek. He played Reginald Barclay on Star Trek.
And on Voyager and The Next Generation. Yeah.
Yes, had been a co-host with me on some of my radio shows for a number of years. And Dwight came to me one day, and this would have been probably about 2001 or 2. It was right around the time of the Twin Tower attacks in New York City. And he said, "Hey, you're not going to believe what I was just told." And I said, "What?" So he mentioned his neighbor. And he said, "We were talking about some UFO stuff." And Dwight was a big fan of material on the UFO topic. And he said, "Do you know that JPL has discovered water, liquid running water on Mars?" And I said, "You're kidding." He said, No. I said, "My God, is that going to be a great, news blurb? Everybody has been asking about, is there water on Mars? Would it be possible to maintain life there?" Years went by, and they never released that until quite a few years later. Now, that also, my cop instinct went crazy. That also made me go, "Oh my God, that's weird. Why would they do that? What are they always looking for, Cardinal Sin? What is it that NASA, JPL, Houston, what are they always looking for?" Money.
Water.
Money. They're looking for money for their research. Well, my God, if you come forward and you say we've discovered water on Mars, wouldn't you think that would spur some additional cash so they could get there to start looking for this? What does water mean? It means potentially life.
Well, and also, especially on the moon, it means a supply of drinkable water that, colonists could potentially use and live there.
And not to mention, manufacturing rocket fuel.
Yep.
Water
Cracking that
is
stuff
used
into
for that.
hydrogen and oxygen.
Exactly. So anyway, back to the moon. So I start doing some real in-depth lunar research. I haunted the libraries. I went out to the bookstore. I thought my wife was going to smack me on the head with all the money I was spending on books that I was using for research.
And knowing Vicky, she's the last person you want to be slapping you on the head.
Yes, exactly. I did not need that. But I started coming across some very cryptic things. Okay? Some very cryptic information. One of the things that I discovered when I was researching Apollo, the space race in the 60s, and so forth, was a NASA technical report, 277, and I'm going by memory.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what in the world was NASA technical report 277?
Got me.
Well, I'll tell you. Before Apollo really got lit up, and we're talking about, now you have to remember that the space race was broken down into several sections.
Mm-hmm.
The Gemini program was where we first launched dual astronauts into orbit. They knew at that time, probably, once we were actually going to the moon, that we would have probably 3 astronauts. We would have the commander, we would have the command module pilot, and we would have a secondary. And that's exactly what happened. But in order to get there, they had to go by steps. Okay, they couldn't just jump all into it at one time. And as Gemini came and went, NASA was aware of oddities and phenomena that had been reported on the moon going back literally centuries.
Oh, yeah.
And
as soon as telescopes were invented, people were reporting seeing flashes of light on the moon, transient lunar phenomena, things that looked like cities that were there one day and gone the next. It boggles the mind.
Exactly. And that's what this report covered, going back 400 years. Mm-hmm. Reports from world-class astronomers all over the globe. Well, one of the things that was really strange were what were referred to as lunar domes. These were like
hearing about those.
These were like, well, literally domes that would pop up in clusters around the lunar surface, sometimes in geometric patterns and sometimes not, but they would be there for maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks, and suddenly they would disappear and then appear somewhere else. Now, the idea that they carried firearms up to the moon, does that surprise you now? So anyway, they had no idea what they might encounter. I'm guessing this. Well, as time went on, okay, we went to the moon, and I was a teenager during this period of time, and I followed this very closely, and there were a lot of plans that were being discussed in the public arena. For example, colonies up there, manufacturing processes up there. And remember, at this time, we were in a breakneck race with the Soviet Union, the Russians, because they were trying as hard as we were to get there first.
Maybe a little harder, actually. I think that they said that Yuri Gagarin was the first man in space, the first man. He was a national hero to the Soviet Union, but I think he was actually not only the first astronaut or cosmonaut that went into space and was safely returned to the Earth, but there might have been a cosmonaut before him that was successfully launched into space and did not make it back.
More than one.
More than one.
More than one. The Russians lost more than one. They may have lost the first female cosmonaut in space. There have been a lot of rumors about that for years.
Her transmissions.
Yes. So, at any rate, they get up there, and the rumors began. Allegedly, some ham radio operators were able to also track the flight up there and were able to tune in. NASA had code words that they used, certain code word, and they would flip the conversation to an encrypted channel.
To the medical channel, as I recall.
Yeah. However, these ham radio operators allegedly were able to follow along. Mm-hmm. And the big rumor was that Neil and Buzz observed craft on the rim of a large crater.
Huge craft.
Close to where they touched down, that allegedly were observing them. Now, did that happen? I have no idea. Only they could tell you. Armstrong is dead. Aldrin is not talking. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe the command pilot just recently passed on.
What was his name? Mike Collins? Michael Collins,
I believe.
Yeah. That's too bad.
Yeah, so at any rate...
he wouldn't have seen anything anyway, but...
Is that... Well, actually, he did. He did. Yes, while he was in lunar orbit.
What did
he saw flash. As a matter of fact, it made newspaper reports. He was flying over certain areas of the moon where he claimed he witnessed flashing lights coming from the surface.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yes.
So, and of course, he would have known that they weren't the flashing lights from anywhere near the landing site.
No. Now, here was the thing. There is one part of the moon that we can never see from the planet Earth. And that is the rear side, where the moon is tidally locked into an orbit around the Earth. And we never can see the rear of the moon, or what we call the far side of the moon. But if, in fact, there is a presence up there that is not of Earth, that would be the ideal place to have it.
Right.
And I have photographs of one of those areas called King's Crater that seem to show, among other things, satellite dishes, habitats with lit windows, and some other inexplicable things. Now, back in 2001, I had an invitation from Art Bell to appear on his show to talk about my lunar research. And Bell had asked me if I would send him some photographs that I had that would show these things. Now, you got to know a little bit about Bell.
So they could put them up on the Coast to Coast website.
Yes. Bell and I had known each other for many years, going back to about 1991. Now, I'm not saying this to make myself seem like I'm bragging, but Bell always saw me as competition.
Of course.
And I had chided Art over the years with some of his guests. Okay? People like Dr. Doom and some of the real wackos. Now, I took my radio broadcasting very seriously to give information to the public. Okay? Do I see Walter Bosley?
That's Walter Bosley, ladies and gentlemen.
Hey, guys, I hope it's okay that I did indeed jump in.
Of course.
A wacky thought the schedule has changed, and then it was changed back, and I don't know if my email went through, but here I am.
How you doing, Walter?
Good. How you doing, Don?
All right.
Sounds like
It's great to see you, buddy.
me, Walter.
Don't let me interrupt you. Continue with what you guys were talking.
Yes, please.
So anyway, Art, would get, shall we say, somewhat irritated with me. Okay, when I would give him a hard time or talk about some of the crap that he had on Coast to Coast and not even question it. So he invites me on in 2001. I send him the pictures, and the first thing out of his mouth is, "I don't see anything. They look like rocks." Well, I had to walk him through the picture. And one of the funniest things that I'll never forget, suddenly he said, oh my, I do see that." So I kind of turned Bell around. He thought he was going to make me look like a fool, but didn't quite come off that way.
Putting the shoe on the other foot, right?
Right. So
I'm just showing off some of the merch that we'll be giving away at the end of tonight's show.
Then I met and became friends with a man that I don't know how many in your audience today will know his name, but a fellow by the name of Ingo Swann.
Oh, sure. His book, Penetration, is very interesting.
Swann is the man that developed the protocols that enabled the Department of Defense, the CIA, and I suppose the No Such Agency outfit, NSA,
right,
to remote view. Okay, he goes all the way back to Stanford Research in the very early 70s. Now, if you were around in the late 50s, or if you're familiar with the history, you will remember the furor that hit the United States with the so-called missile gap between us and the Soviet Union. And everybody freaked out. The Russians were sticking satellites up in orbit, and our spacecraft, our rockets, were blowing up on the pad, okay? And the big fear, of course, was they were going to stick an H-bomb on those rockets, and they could nail us, ICBMs from outer space, and we couldn't do anything about it. Well, in the early 70s, there was another furor that hit in certain quarters. The phenomena furor, where the Russians had been doing psychic, well, I guess the best way to say it is warfare test, psychic research, okay, into propelling and projecting their mind. Well, there were two people at Stanford then that were major stars in the psychic warfare thing. Swann was one of them. The other, and I probably should temper my speech about this. The other one was a double agent who was highly gifted, but he was a secret member of the Church of Scientology. And everything he was doing, he was feeding to the Scientologist. Now, how do I know that? Well, later on, the FBI raided Scientology. They were up to some, I don't know, Walter, would nefarious things be the right way to go?
Yeah, you could call it that.
Yeah, some nefarious things. And they found these reports that had been fed in by this guy into Scientology. But these guys apparently had the ability to remotely view, project their mind. To give you an example, in the late 70s, we had probes on the way to Jupiter and, out into the solar system. Swan remotely viewed, long before the probe got there, what was happening, in these in our solar system, these far-off destinations. So the guy was real. Now, I spent about 5 hours with Ingo out here in Burbank. We went to an Italian restaurant over there, had a dinner, my wife and I, and Ingo and somebody else. And let me tell you what, that was a dinner I will never forget. And one of the big things, Ingo was fascinated with what I had been doing with my lunar research. And I was fascinated with his book, Penetration.
Yeah.
And, some of the stuff that we discussed, I wished I would have had a recorder of some type. I would almost kill to have the transcripts of that night in front of me.
Well, we have your memory to go on, Don.
You sure?
Well, it's got to be better than mine. I promise you that.
Yeah. But anyway, Ingo basically remotely viewed what can only be described as an extraterrestrial facility on the back end of the moon. Now, I'll never forget, we're sitting there, over this scrumptious Italian dinner, and he was relaying what he saw in his mind's eye as he was RVing this thing. And he described it as he was looking at a scene that seemed to be encompassed by, I'm going to use Star Trek technology, a force field of some type. Everything was in a green. Are you familiar with night vision?
Oh, sure.
Okay. Like looking through a night vision scope.
Night vision, but I know that you're talking about night vision scopes and, the starlight filters, infrared, that kind of thing.
Right. And he said there were almost nude humanoid figures working in the lunar dust, doing who knows what. And he said the part that about floored him was suddenly he realized that they recognized that he was there. And it shocked him so badly.
Oh, yeah, they saw him.
It shocked him so badly, they literally knocked him out of that RV session. Now, I was kind of, astonished at this story as he related, although I had read it in his book. And he told me for the next 3 or 4 months, he was literally, because he described them as not being friendly disposed toward humans, he was afraid somebody was going to track him down and fry his mind. That was his greatest fear. And I asked him, I said, well, what would this feeling of hostility. What would it be all about? And he, of course, didn't know for sure, but he said he thought it was because they saw us as potential opponents because of our own innate psychic abilities. Mm-hmm. That was what he thought. So, I don't know. Take it for what it's worth. Now, Walter has quite a bit of knowledge about remote viewing. As a matter of fact, a few years ago, on another network with my radio show, he and I did a test off the air.
You and Walter did?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Until now, I wasn't even sure you guys knew each other.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we've known each other a few years now.
Yeah, Walter gave me some coordinates, and I got to say, I was shocked. Now, I was no great shake when it came to that.
No, you gave me the coordinates, and I did the...
Oh, that's right.
And you did the
I'm
remote
sorry.
viewing. Yeah.
But it seemingly worked, okay? It seemingly worked. And I was like, wow, Walter, that's cool.
It can be. It gets your attention particularly when you first learn it. Now, honestly, there's more than one method out there you can learn, and there's reasons for that. But the method I was taught, I came to wonder if the phase where you're training, it has to do with the ideogram. The ideogram is that first little thing that you draw, right, as you pretty much start your session, and you let your hand do this thing, this squiggle. Well, what I noticed pretty quickly into it was all of my ideograms, that initial ideogram, look exactly alike, essentially. They're all the same, starts with a big point and then, a few arches, and then it wavers off. And each of the test images that you're simply given coordinates for, that you're supposed to be viewing, when you get to see them, you're amazed because your ideogram technically is supposed to have the shape. That initial thing you do is supposed to have a hint of the shape of what the thing is, or something that's in there. And I noticed when I went back that, wait a minute, all the test targets when you're training have a pointed kind of feature to them where your squiggle is going to apply to each of them. And I wondered, my cynical side wondered, okay, was that by design to get you to say, wow, this really works? Okay, that's what the cynical side says. But then there's the other side.
Your skeptical side, you mean, not cynical.
What's that?
Your skeptical side, not your cynical side.
Well, that too.
I've seen you
side is that somebody always
on your show, ladies and gentlemen, by the way, the great Walter Bosley has his own YouTube channel. You should definitely check it out and subscribe. It's called the Walter Bosley Channel. So it's very easy to remember.
There it is.
But please continue.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, it's both cynical and skeptical because, there's, for years in our community, we've been plagued with people that are, con artists and stuff. So you kind of have to. But anyway, yeah, my skeptical, cynical side was like, is this kind of rigged? But then here's the thing. You experience enough other things as you go in it farther that it is legit. You're wondering, you wonder yourself, how did I do that? But for me personally, I was doing it every day for, I want to say, about 7 months. I was doing multiple sessions every day.
Walter, you not only learned the remote viewing protocols, but it turned out you were pretty good at it.
I was able to do it. and it was working for me. But what happened was, what I was saying was that I began to, according to some other people, I began to RV things on an archetypal level. Now that sounds all cool esoterically. The problem is, if you're trying to use RV in a practical manner, like, gee, where did I leave the car keys? Or, gee, you know, what's inside that building? The archetypal level isn't going to be of any immediate help. So,
and let me just interrupt briefly here.
Sure.
For you guys to be able to answer my question, I've heard that remote viewing has been described as an innate human ability that anyone can do if they put their minds to it and they're serious about it, and that it's kind of a lost art, if you will, that people in the ancient world used to be able to do all the time, and then we just kind of forgot about it. Is that more or less correct?
Well, you know, I like to be egalitarian about psychic stuff. I do think that all human beings are capable of doing these things. It's a matter of developing them, right? Like you said, and that's that's I think one of the main premises of remote viewing is the fact that we all have this ability, and the protocol, the system brings that up and out and helps you develop it better. Now, I think there are people who are much stronger with these kinds of things than others, so they're going to probably be really incredible at it from the get-go. But there are issues. You can look at it from the pure technical, you know, perspective, practical technical perspective, but you are also you're kind of opening your subconscious up to a wider spectrum. And just like the potential dangers and problems with channeling, you could open yourself up to something you might not want to or might regret through remote viewing. I could see that. So there's that caveat. If, you know, when I talk to someone that's interested in trying it, I'm like, hey, just be aware that you need to be careful what you're opening the subconscious to.
Mm-hmm. Because when you look into the abyss, sometimes it looks back.
Yeah, and there's things out there that may not like you or may want to have lots of fun at your expense.
That's an excellent reason why I will not have a Ouija board in my house.
Yeah.
Agreed.
That is something that, and over the years, I've encountered, not a lot, but a number of cases where apparently people fiddling with those devices ended up wishing they hadn't.
Yeah.
Well, you know, the man who taught me, specifically taught me how to use a particular method of necromancy, the man who told me to go out to an old colonial cemetery on Long Island and taught me the process for communicating with a dead spirit and raising that dead spirit up to get information from that dead person. This same guy is the guy that told me to not ever fool with a Ouija board. So think about that. A guy that will tell me to go talk to dead people in a cemetery, even he said, stay the hell away from a Ouija board. So to me, that's saying something.
Yeah. So, Don, getting back to the stuff that's on the moon that's not supposed to be there.
Well,
via remote viewing.
Exactly. Well, not only remote viewing, but photographs that were taken from not only NASA sources, but ground-based astronomers. Back in the 50s, there was a very unusual photograph that was taken by an astronomer, which seemed to show a Celtic cross that was lit up, okay, like a searchlight, that ended up appearing in the Harvard Astronomy magazine. Are you familiar with that, Walter?
The way you described it as the Celtic cross, I think, yeah, that one does sound familiar.
Right.
Sounds like a
Almost like it was
prestigious
not a
journal
lightning
for
rod,
something
but
like that
maybe
to be in.
Had energy in it.
Right. So, I mean, over the years, there have been a lot of strange things that have happened in and around the moon, not to mention that what Swan indicated to me. Now, of course, this is not the same as a JPL or a NASA or, a Houston-based photograph or something coming back from a lunar orbit. But in I believe it was 96, something else happened that was, well, on the surface NASA, but it wasn't. It was the Department of Defense. There was a program called the Clementine Program.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And as a matter of fact, Dr. John Brandenburg, who's been a friend of mine for over 30 years, okay, and he and I had many conversations about this, was the administrative aide to the director of the Clementine mission.
By the way, Don, I have to give you mad props for your wonderful segue into Dr. John Brandenburg.
Oh, well, okay.
Well done.
I'll take him. I'll take him. But
I've heard you talk to him on your shows so much, and the stuff that he has to say is so interesting and so well documented, just blows the mind.
oh, yeah. As a matter of fact, I just, not to get segued, but I just spoke to John about 3 or 4 days ago. He has been down with COVID. He told me he contracted COVID. But he called me from the hospital. He sounded very tired. And I said, John, I don't want to keep you, man. Get your rest. And he said, yeah, okay. He said, I'll call you in a day or two. Well, he didn't, so I called him back. And he was still, trying to get back to, still in the hospital, still trying to get back to 100%. So I'm expecting I'll probably be talking to him in the next week. But anyway.
He wasn't on a ventilator, right?
No.
Okay.
No.
Well, once he gets better, if you could, give him my information, I would love to have him on the show.
Okay. Sure. Now,
Just as an aside.
to get back to Clementine, this was a DOD mission, Department of Defense, but it was under NASA, okay? They sent up, well, Walter probably could tell you as well as I could the technology involved in some of these spy satellites. They took the equivalent of, what the heck is it, Walter? A KH, the super duper spy satellite that can be sitting up there 2,500 miles and photograph your license plate.
And I can't remember
take a
those
photo
details.
of a dime. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about, but I can't remember the details.
Well, they had one of these up there with them, and guess what they were doing? They were completely re-photographing the freaking moon. The whole moon. They took over 2 million pictures. Now,
Wow.
how many of those have you seen in the public arena, in the public venue? Very damn few, if any.
I haven't seen any, and I have no idea how many are publicly available.
Now, my question would be, and I put on my detective hat, what in the hell would they be looking for? Well, the only thing I could come up with, changes on the lunar surface. Changes.
As opposed to maybe helium-3, but yeah.
Well, how many photographs did they take during the space race and the Apollo missions? Okay, they photographed the moon from top to bottom. Now suddenly it's the DoD doing the photographing. That struck me as exceedingly strange, and they kept it's hush hush.
Civilian agency.
And today, most people are not even aware of that. They may have heard Clementine. What's that mean? Okay. Well, this was something that the DoD did, and like everything else, today it's buried.
Well, isn't it interesting? You're talking about things being buried in that regard. I mean, the fact that they called it Clementine, I have to wonder, we know that Clementine comes from a very famous American folk song of the mining era about miners. So could that be some type of hint or clue as to what they were looking for? Was there something under the surface of the moon associated with these this archaeology on the moon, as they call it?
Is the moon hollow?
Well, NASA reported in the 60s that when they hit the moon with some probe or whatever, remember it vibrated and rang like a hollow bell.
Rang like a bell, yeah.
For hours and hours and hours.
And hours. And then they quit talking about that.
Right.
So, maybe Clementine was also looking for entrances. I don't know. It's just a wild ass guess, but this stuff is, I think it's been my feeling, my suspicion, I could be wrong about this, but I think when we do get disclosure, I really think they're going to do it through relics on the moon, relics on Mars, and that kind of thing. I think that'll be the first stage.
Just like 2001.
Thousands of years ago, blah, 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 and here's the relics.
Well, probably close to 30 years ago, at UFO Magazine, I got a call from Richard Hoagland. Richard Hoagland, the face on Mars. I mean, Mars, a city on the edge of forever. He got himself up to his eyebrows in the Cydonia controversy, the face on Mars, the pyramids on Mars, etc. And he called me up, and we knew each other. He knew, Vicky knew him from UFO Magazine. Mm-hmm. Dick said, hey, Don, he said, Stan McDaniel, Professor Stan McDaniel, was working on something at the time. NASA was getting ready to go back to Mars with the Mars Observer, which took off, I think it was now, my God, I'm going on memory, 93 or 94. And they were going to launch without allegedly any cameras on board. Now, everybody wanted NASA to rephotograph Cydonia, to answer the question once and for all. And they played that hinky from top to bottom, always, all right? They weren't going to have a camera on board. Well, they were raising hell. McDaniel and Hoagland were raising hell with NASA. And he said, Don, the reason I'm calling you, I know you were a detective. I know you were a cop. I've heard rumors that there was a document prepared back at the beginning of NASA, a document that covered a lot of these areas. Could you do a little research and find out if that's true? Well, I did, and I discovered the document, okay? And in this document, they talked, and this is, and once again, I'm going from memory, on I think it was page 216.
Wow.
They were talking about not if, but when either live extraterrestrials or extraterrestrial artifacts were discovered. What do we do? Do we tell the public or not? If we tell the public, there are going to be two groups of people that are going to be adversely affected. I love the way they said that, Walter. Adversely affected. And those two groups of people...
Can I hazard a guess?
Yeah, and there will be... Go ahead.
I'd guess those very religious people and the people in charge of the stock market.
Well, you got the religious people correct. Scientists and engineers.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Scientists and engineers and the extreme religiously inclined people. And they weren't talking about necessarily Christian, Jewish, Muslim,
sure,
but people that are extreme in their beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly we've got a problem. So what do? And they said that it would probably be in 20 years. Now, this document came out 61, 62. So 20 years would have been the early 80s. And here we are in currently 2021. Any idea what they decided on?
How to make it work in the Werner von Braun story that they're going to use it against us.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I love that song about Werner von Braun that, what's his name, wrote and sang. At 90 years of age, recently, he made his entire catalog in the public domain. I don't remember his name, but the song about Werner von Braun, I don't care which country I work for as long as I get to make my rockets, and soon he'll be learning Chinese, that kind of thing.
Well, what people don't say about von Braun was a Nazi SS colonel.
Yep.
Okay.
And when Project Paperclip brought him over, they just crossed out the ardent in von Braun as an ardent Nazi.
Yeah. Then that picture of him in his uniform turned up. Oops.
Yeah.
Whoops. and then I guess
I might add, if you're a reluctant Nazi, or you're a reluctant Nazi and you're in your uniform, you're not happy about that. He's in
talk about an oxymoron.
Uniform. Not just a Nazi uniform, an SS uniform.
Yeah.
Right.
Smiling.
And he used slave labor in his rocket research.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Nobody talks about that. They whitewashed it. And I got to be honest, that pissed me off. He's seen as this great rocket scientist. Well,
he was, but
the other part of it,
the thing is, they like to say, well, he changed his attitude, because also when you go back and look at the paperclip records, their reports, the Army intel reports on this guy, counterintelligence reports, were he was arrogant. He was one of the ones behind maintaining their rank structure kind of undercover, on the down low, as we say these days, maintaining their rank structure that they had in Germany secretly, and keeping that as best they could from the U.S. But the Army counterintelligence guys, to their credit, they got that info. But so I mean, he's doing stuff like that, and let's not even go into how many Nazi fingers were in the creation of our military-industrial complex.
Mm-hmm.
So, and he was one of the, really, when you think about it, he was one of those Germans that helped make that happen. Our military-industrial complex, which Eisenhower warned us about, which
right,
some
which
people
is now,
say JFK
of course,
was murdered by.
the military-industrial congressional complex.
Yeah, and they're poster boys, the neocons, who emerged after Reagan. Let's be in a state of war all the time to maintain the American empire. I'm all for a strong America, but this empire thing, I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, we're kind of in a bucket of excrement right now.
Yeah, we are.
And let me get just a tiny bit well, hell, I'm going to do it anyway, but just
we
tiny
try
bit.
not to get too political on the show.
Yeah, but here's something to think about.
Okay.
This is something to think about. You know, I've been watching the controversy on a woman's right to choose, abortion, life, etc., going back now over 45 years. Okay? The abortion question. And if you talk to anybody, especially in public media, they will say it's a woman's right to choose.
Mm-hmm.
I got no beef with that. None whatsoever. I feel the same way. Who am I to tell a woman what she can do or not do? But on the other hand, alternatively, today, this vaccine horse manure, they're telling you you've got no choice but to get the shot. You want to keep your job?
Mandate. Yeah.
Get the shot. You don't get the shot?
Is that in
go
California?
home. Oh, sure.
Is that what you mean?
So-
I mean, it's not nationwide or anything.
What, the mandates?
Yeah.
The administration's trying to make it nationwide.
As goes California, so goes the nation.
So the bottom line is, if it were up to me, now, in all full disclosure, I got the initial shots, the 2 shots back in March and April. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
I'm vaccinated. So, there it is. Am I getting the booster? No, I'm not going to get the booster. Okay? It was sold to me originally as, you're now vaccinated, you're cool. So if I were on that precipice right now where they're telling me you got no choice, if you want to keep your job, you get a shot, my body, my choice. Okay? That's the way it should be.
It's funny how suddenly my body, my choice has not changed the minds of the people that think about it for abortion purposes. When it comes to guys, and they tell the guys, by the way, if you get COVID, you have a much increased chance of erectile dysfunction. That changes things.
But you know what they're not talking about in any quarter? Where in the hell did this virus come from?
China.
It came from China. And nobody wants to remind the Chinese of that.
Well, there's things going on that explain these other things that, unfortunately, we're just going to have to. I look at it like this. It's like 2017 in ufology. There's a critical mass. There's enough people that are buying into it that there's really nothing you can do about it. We now have to ride out the impact that 2017, everything changed since the New York Times article and the Tic Tac nonsense.
But Walter,
there's
as far as I can tell, as far as I can tell, after that Above the Fold article in December of 2017, and the videos that leaked out, which had been out there anyway since 2004, nobody batted an eye. It was just like life as usual. The only people that
nothing changed.
The only people that thought that there was any kind of disclosure happening were people that were already in the UFO community.
Yeah, but there's enough voices out there that, oh my God, everything's changed. It's similar to the thing with China and the COVID thing. And this is my opinion. Many of you might disagree, but from my perspective,
oh God forbid you have an opinion that people disagree with, Walter.
Yeah. Don, you might have a similar perspective, but from my perspective, ultimately, we're going to look back and see these years as the lead up to what became the next major World War conflict. Mm-hmm. What's been going on now is espionage and the various things that lead up to what eventually leads to war. And actually, when you're playing with things in a lab, like a virus, and it gets put out there in a population, I'm in that camp that to me, it looks and feels like an
The
intentional
CCP.
act.
Yeah.
The first volley of fire, so to
And
speak.
funny how quickly China was able to respond to it and how long it took them to tell the world what had happened.
Sure.
Coincidence?
And so that's
Or
where we're at.
strange true fact.
It's called communism, Chinese
Yeah.
communists.
Yep.
Okay, they hate us. They love our money, but they hate us. And don't for a second think they don't. Hey, look, I fought Chinese volunteers in Vietnam, okay? Chinese volunteers volunteer my ass. Now, the bottom line is they want to overtake us. Nikita Khrushchev said it best back in the late 50s, the early 60s.
Bang
We'll
his
bury
shoe
you.
against the... Yeah.
And you know how they're doing it? From within. Currently, from
Yeah.
within.
And that's where the whole woke thing comes from, which I was stunned to discover. But my good friend Ivan Ivanovich, that's his nom de plume, but he's very well educated, very intelligent. He showed me and connected the dots for me about how all of the woke stuff that's infected our pop culture can be traced back to the CCP. They're the ones that have organized this whole deal. I mean, we're talking about major multinational corporations, Disney, CBS, etc., the BBC. Some of the good news is the BBC had Doctor Who taken away from them because Russell T. Davies is coming back, who started the show again. And he and Julie Gardner, who is the executive producer of the reboot of Doctor Who, and Russell T. Davies formed their own company and called it Bad Wolf, and they wrested control away of Doctor Who from the BBC. So it might actually get good again, which for me is great news because it's been my favorite show since I was a kid. Anyway, please continue.
Well, but that's reflective of, Hollywood shakes at the knees every time China doesn't like something, And when I see
China
that,
said,
it's like, wait a minute.
no more Marvel movies, and then we put out Shang-Chi, which didn't go over there at all.
Hollywood used to pride itself on going counter to some authority, telling them they didn't like what they put
Of
out.
course.
And now, of course, they
I'll tell you,
Chinese dollars.
I'll tell you a little secret about Hollywood. Back in the early to mid 30s, they kowtowed to the Nazis in Germany, Berlin. They had a big, Nazi Germany, or Germany, was one of the places they sent their films. And they danced to the Nazi tune, which is kind of funny because at the time, there were many people that adhered to the communist ideology in Hollywood. Okay? There were Reds in Hollywood. Lucille Ball
McCarthy
belonged.
era, right?
Well, no, that was later. Lucille Ball had been a member of the Communist Party. I Love Lucy. Okay, later she dropped it, but all that came back to haunt a lot of people during the House on Un-American Activities business that happened in the early 50s,
Right.
which has a curious UFO tie-in.
Yes, it does. But
Does
also,
it?
it's interesting this came up is I posted just last night. I've been doing readings from various sources, and I read
Which I've been
I
watching and listening to, and I think is fascinating. It's great
Thank
stuff.
you. Yeah, I last night I read the conclusion of M. Stanton Evans' book, Blacklisted by History: The True Story of Joseph McCarthy, and I'll tell you, parts of it will break your heart. And parts of it will seem quite resonant to the style of character assassination that people on the left love to do.
Well, yeah, and cancel culture, in my opinion, is the worst form of bullying. But, another thing, I think that the whole situation that's going on with wokeifying American pop culture coming from the Chinese Communist Party, makes total sense. They will do whatever they can against us. Walter, having been a AFOSI counterintelligence operative, you know better than any of us how many ways that they will work against us, politically, economically, with the pop culture wars, and ways that I haven't even thought about.
Psychologically, psycho-emotionally.
There you go.
Where do you think this ongoing theme of love your fellow man, don't destroy the fragile planet, missiles are bad, that started with the contactees in the 50s, and where do you think that came from? Our authorities, our military leaders and our national security leaders at the time back then suspected this sounds like some KGB socio-political game playing, and that's exactly what it was. Like today, when you see a current star act all dramatic on an interview, we've got to be stewards of our planet and love each other. It's like, okay, we've been hearing this for decades, and I'm not saying the idea in itself is bad. Of course, you should be good to your fellow man. Nobody wants the world destroyed in a nuclear war. My point is, the theme has been hammered, particularly at the ufology community, for decades, and the source of it is questionable, because I don't for a minute think it's from space angels on flying saucers. But that's something that, when you go back in UFO history and you look at what these government documents and the government authorities and military and national security were concerned about, they were noticing that theme was trying to foment a desire for disarmament in the American people during the Cold War. So obviously the Soviets had a stake in getting the people to, be for disarmament.
But now, in the modern day, I believe you said this, Walter, correct me if I'm wrong, that everybody's all Russia, 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 but Russia can't really do anything. It's all about China.
Yeah. And I like to remind people, Russia has not been the Soviet Union for 30 years. Okay. You got these people who,
although it's being run by a strongman that was a KGB guy first.
Yeah. Well, and interesting that, the evil Putin, if you look more closely, it's similar to what I learned about Napoleon Bonaparte. Gosh, when you look closer at these people, they're not the evil bugaboo that their opponents make them out to be. And so it tells you more about the people slandering them than it does anything that the slanderers are saying.
Well, what scares me right now, and I'll tell you, I am concerned about it. The United States, right now, our military is not in good shape. It's not.
Even though they've spent more and more and more money on their budget,
it's becoming increasingly politicized.
Yeah, this SJW.
It's not like it was when you were serving, right?
That's a death knell.
Yeah.
And China, the communist Chinese have been flexing their muscle big time. And
all you have to do is look at what they've done with the ports all over the world. They've done this lend-lease operation with ports to different countries, and they'll say, your port isn't secure, it's crumbling. We'll go ahead and lend you $550 million for infrastructure and to make it more secure. And of course, the politicians of these countries skim off the top, and by the time the thing is supposed to be done, nothing's been done. And they end up owing China $550 million. And it's not even in the small print. It says right there, if you don't pay us back within 5 or 10 years, depending on which port it is, it becomes our property. They now own 21 ports all around the world. And while they don't own the Panama Canal, they do own a lot of the support services around it.
On both ends.
Right now, Taiwan is breathing heavy.
Oh, yeah.
And if something unforeseen were to happen, okay, with our current administration, I have my doubts that we could mount a successful defense
It's
of
scary
the
to think
Taiwanese.
about. At least we have the Gorn, Walter, right?
We have the what?
We have the Gorn.
Oh,
If nothing else.
Gorn.
The Gorn, yes.
Yeah, I agree with Don. This is where I'm concerned. I'm about, if I had to put a number on it, I'm about 75-80% certain that the next world war, so to speak, is going to be China versus whoever stands up to them.
Well, I saw a bit of John Pilger's documentary about what the United States has been doing and provoking both Russia and China. And we have, when I say we, of course, I mean the government, we have literally, with a string of pearls, ringed around China more tightly and more tightly, to the degree that it is provocation. And we've done the same thing on the border of Russia. We've moved up our, anti-missile missiles and troops and etc., which breaks one of our treaties with them. How long can we expect to go on like that, provoking these? You never want to poke the sleeping bear, right?
Right.
That's exactly what we're doing.
Well, I've told people it would behoove us with this issue with China. We need to find a way to be friends with Russia, okay? Because they're right next door, and if we get into it, it would be great to have Russia and the other nations of Southeast Asia that are on our side, and India, to kind of be there at the front on all sides. But when when our leaders are wanting to demonize the Russians, I could see Putin saying, deal with it yourself, when it happens. Or whoever, by the time it happens, who's ever running Russia by then. But I'm kind of leaning towards it's inevitable, a war with China, one way or another.
One of the Chinese sayings or curses, I'm not sure, I don't remember which one it is. May you live in interesting times, and boy, do we ever, right?
Well, they used to say I heard this some years back. Don, you probably heard this, that we need to worry when the Chinese military exchanges their sneakers for boots, for combat boots. Meaning that's, we need to watch for those signs of real readiness. And because they used to, remember, their boots used to look like sneakers. They were like kind of faux boots. And, the stuff their Navy's been doing with these fabricated
encroachments,
islands or whatever, it's scary, which leads back to UFO world, and why I'm sorry. I suspect this whole Tic Tac episode has been showing off some level of defense technology that the Chinese will understand, no matter how many UFO fans will say, E.T., we couldn't.
And how interesting is it that no one else has seen these things except the military?
Well, somebody put out a video the other day. I don't know if it's legit, but it was in Michigan, and it allegedly shows a fairly clear image footage of what looks like a Tic Tac. But somebody, I believe Mick West, made a point of saying, it looks suspiciously mundane, like, something not out of this world. And think about it. When you're in the Great Lakes region, where are you? You're right up there by Canada. And look at the history of advanced classified aviation development that's associated with Canada. Okay, so
Yeah.
should it really surprise us that someone would see something like that anywhere near Canada? It shouldn't. Meaning, if it's our technology. But I think that's what this whole Tic Tac thing has been about.
Well, speaking of China, we were involved in armed conflict with the North Vietnamese communists for close to 15 years. And the North Vietnamese were receiving equipment, munitions, all kinds of stuff from not only the Soviets and their satellite nations, but also the Chinese. Now, that was curious because for 2,000 years, the Vietnamese people and the Chinese have been bitter enemies. Now, when ideology came into the equation, however, all past sins were forgotten. Well,
interesting usage of past sins.
Yeah. We got out of Vietnam totally in 75. And just a couple of short years after that, how many of you remember the bitter war that broke out between North Vietnam and Communist China? They had a hell of a war going on, 78, 79. And quite frankly, the North Vietnamese stomped their eggs for them, the Chinese eggs. Well, then they got things patched up for whatever thing. But when you talk about the other nations in Southeast Asia, all of those people are breathing heavy when you're talking about Communist China, because China would love to come in there and just take it all over.
Yeah, traditionally, Thailand has been no big fan of China. Is my understanding, at least on the level of the people, and that's why we need to be doing those countries right, because if we get into it, we're going to need them, and everyone, like Don was saying, everyone that China gets in their camp is going to be a problem for our side when this happens.
I do want to make a quick announcement before we go on to our next topic or continue. For our giveaway tonight, you can enter at the URL on your screen. And we're going to give away 3 signed UFO magazines from Don. And thank you very much for that. And I will be giving away 2 Into the Fringe t-shirts. And I want to show them. I'm going to make myself big here real quick. And you have this wonderful, very nice design, very nice t-shirt. And of course, you have the URL on the back. So these are priced at basically little to no profit. As a thank you for being a walking billboard for my channel. And we also have the white design, which also has the URL on the back. So if and when you win, and you have to be in the chat to win, I'll be asking for which type you want and your preferred t-shirt size. And we'll also, exchange information. I'll get your email address for the winners. But I wanted to go ahead and mention that. And I'm going to put the link up one more time. And you guys go ahead and go back to what you were talking about.
Somebody asked if I'd hold up some UFO magazines.
Yes.
So
thank you. I'll make you big, and you can show us some.
Yep.
Wow. Cool. Don, I understand you used to be quite involved in UFO Magazine.
Yeah, you might say that.
So
yes,
these are magazines you really can't get anymore. They're very rare, and to be autographed by Don is kind of a big deal. So thank you, Don, for that.
You're welcome.
Hail, Eastern Burkholder. Good to see you. And anybody that wants to get into the giveaway just has to go to the URL here on your screen, and Jill, anti-derivative Jill, will get your name on the spinner wheel, and we'll spin that wheel and give away all those great giveaways. So thanks again, Don. And Walter, so glad you could make it. Really enjoying the conversation. Please continue.
I was just thinking here real quickly, talking about Russia, the former Soviet Union. Here's an issue from 1992. UFO update from the new Russian Commonwealth, which, oh God, let's see if I can get that all in the frame. I've got to get a new camera.
When the Russian mafia were running the country, right?
Yes.
The Yeltsin years?
Yes.
Everything was like the Wild West over there.
Yeah.
Slider's blog is out of here and says, "Be seeing you." Thank you for being here. And
after the fall of the wall, at the time I was an FBI wiretap monitor, FISA wiretap monitor, listening to KGB and GRU spies that we had their office phones wiretapped. And when the wall fell and the Soviet Union collapsed, our number one mission was listening for shipments, because the concern obviously was the missiles, the nuclear material, the nuclear warheads and stuff. That was our number one mission. We just were supposed to listen for anything to do, whether it was actual ships, whether it was rail shipments, whatever. That was the big thing, you know. I remember we were pretty intense on that for the better part of a year after that happened. Interesting times, though, that's for sure.
Yeah,
that's about the time George Knapp.
Interesting times.
George Knapp went over there and got all their flying saucer secrets. Do you remember that?
And I think also, wasn't he responsible for bringing Paul Stonehill into the mix?
No.
No,
Paul had been over here a long time. He had gotten out of the Ukraine years before that, had been a correspondent. I knew Paul, God, I'm trying to remember when we first met very well. And he had been down in South Africa doing a lot of stuff. Of course, at that time, there was a lot of conflict going on. Places like the former Rhodesia and some of those, the country had fallen apart. The black nationalist movements were taking over, and it was a pretty crazy time.
It's very interesting how much people can learn from tuning into the Fringe about things that aren't really fringe, that were covered up or forgotten. But yeah, you make a very good point on.
Well, sometimes you find that things themselves that aren't in the fringe, on the fringes of those things, the weird stuff, the weird stuff can be there. Like, look at the stuff, Don, you know this, the weird stuff, PSYOP stuff that the CIA was doing during the Vietnam era, getting into those. Don, did you ever have any experience or hear the use of those recordings that they talk about now, where it was mimicking the dead, and it was used to freak out the VC?
Yeah, I was way, way up north. I was as far north in South Vietnam as you could legally go. I was literally right on the DMZ. And there were mountains, and below me, south of me, was the Asia Valley. And that had been a hotbed of conflict. And by the time all this was going on, the Marines had been pulled out. It was in the middle of Nixon's Vietnamization policy. The 101st Airborne, which had been in the Asia, they were leaving. And there were just a few of us Americans, that were still up there. Now, a little further south in Phubai, there was still a huge installation there. And then beyond that, of course, you're down around Da Nang and the Air Force. And, there were a lot of things down there. But yeah, it was getting pretty lonely up there. And these stories would come out. Not only the ghost stories, Walter, the psyops that they were running, but there were other stories that were coming out involving, you ready for this, mystery helicopters.
Oh, yeah. I remember.
I've seen some mystery helicopters.
Yeah, in Vietnam, though.
No, I've seen them in Kansas.
No. I'm talking about in Vietnam. They appeared to be UAs, UH-1s, but they weren't ours. Now, by that time, there had been thousands and thousands of helicopters that have gone down. And I've often thought to myself, how much trouble would it have been for the North Vietnamese or the VC to go in and scarf away big chunks and pieces of those things, put them back together, and then what we heard, can I prove it? No. But what we heard were they were getting them, they were flying operations using Caucasians from the Soviet Union and East Germany impersonating Americans.
Sure.
So, Don, one thing that I heard, and you can debunk this for me if it's not true, was that the term enemy helicopter activity in Vietnam referred to UFOs because the VC had no helicopters. True?
Well, yes and no. Yes and no. Now, there were several incidents that happened up on the demilitarized zone where quote-unquote enemy helicopters had been flying south. They had been engaged. In one case, and I'm going on memory, a Phantom or a pair of Phantoms out of Da Nang, were flying up there, and they fired missiles at it. Supposedly they hit it, whatever it was. Boom, down it went. And when they checked it the next day, they had a LRP team go in to investigate the area.
What's a LRP team?
LRP, Long Range Reconnaissance Patrols.
Okay.
Went in to investigate the area. All they found was a burn mark. So, what was that? I don't know.
So, somebody scarfed it off with it.
Or it disintegrated or whatever. I don't know.
Right, yeah.
Because they got a definite kill. Something hit it, or it was hit by an air-to-air missile. At least this is what the pilot reported. The thing went down, but then they couldn't find any debris.
There's a question from Mr. MH in the chat, and he's been asking about the Russian Voronezh UFO incident. Voronezh. Thank you.
Right.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, that was the reason for my very first appearance on Larry King Live. And that was back in October of '89. Larry King was out on one of his honeymoons, wife number 12, or God, I don't know. But Pat ran for president of the U.S. Pat, I'm having a brain fart.
Buchanan.
Buchanan, thank you. Pat Buchanan was host.
Boy,
that
I've
night.
got the bad memory.
Yeah, Pat Buchanan. And what had happened was, and this was reported by TASS, okay, which at the time was the official Soviet news agency. An unidentified object landed in the city of Voronezh, seen by, I don't know, at the time, I believe, 1,500 to 2,000 citizens and police. Allegedly, several entities left the craft, wandered around, okay, witnessed all this time by citizens and the police. Nobody was crazy enough to go up and try to interact with them. And then they got back on the craft, took off, and TASS reported it. Now, when I was on that King show with Buchanan, they had a guy, and I remember his name because I kind of said something disparaging about the guy during a commercial break, and I had a hot mic.
Uh-oh.
But the guy was a real numbnut, okay? He was just simply a numbnut. And, UFOs, they're just crazy. They're only weird lunatics see UFOs. That kind of thing.
Class?
Yeah, kind of like that.
Yeah.
Much younger, though.
Oh.
He was a much younger guy. And
he's the guy from Scientific American, right?
no, that wasn't. The magazine was a
It was a
defense
Popular Mechanics. The
magazine.
guys that debunked, UFOs after Phil Klass died.
Oh, hell, everybody did. Who knows?
Yeah.
But anyway, and at the end of that show, I hit Buchanan, and of course he talked about uber neocon. He went into orbit. I said, look, Pat, do you realize that General of the Army Douglas MacArthur, in his last public address that took place at West Point, addressing the graduates of West Point, the new cadets that were becoming officers in the Army, warned the military that, and I'm paraphrasing, at some point they might be faced with a threat from outer space. Mm-hmm. And Buchanan went insane. He said, I have that thing at home. I have that speech on my wall at home. And I said, well, you better check it, Pat. He said, I don't remember that. I said, well, I wouldn't make it if I could. Hey, by the way, here. And I had a copy from West Point I had gotten from the historian. And I said, I can read it to you. And we were out of time.
Oh,
right. Well, we'll talk about that some other time. Oh, sure we will. So I got lambasted by people from every quarter, including MUFON. The editor of the MUFON Journal, I'm forgetting now the guy's name, said I could, in his editorial in the next MUFON issue, I could see ufology going down the tubes when Ecker made that statement. And suddenly he got snowed under by people from all over the country that knew about that speech and wrote in and said, this is exactly what MacArthur said. So I guess in a way I was vindicated, but oh yeah.
Yeah, I think that speech has been published numerous times in its entirety, right? I mean,
Yes.
I didn't think there was any question that he had said that, but that's kind of funny, the response you got from Buchanan.
Oh yeah. Well, Pat Buchanan, he's not one to talk in polite company about flying saucers now, Walter.
Yeah.
Yeah. Flying saucers.
I guess we're not going to have enough time tonight to talk about John Brandenburg.
You think?
Yeah.
We might have to have you back.
Oh my God.
And I have to say, having you both on is a real treat, and it's the largest audience we've had on Into the Fringe for a long time. So thank you both for being here. It really means a lot.
Well, it's a real treat for me to be on with Walter, to tell you the truth. We haven't.
With being on with Dawn, thanks for letting me jump back in. I was going to be on, then I didn't think I was going to make it, so I appreciate you letting me jump back in. So
well, now I'm going to tell a little secret.
Uh-oh.
Can I tell a secret?
Sure.
Dark Matters Radio is coming back.
Really?
Yes, yes, on
great.
Unix, the Unix network, and Walter, we're gonna do a show real soon, pal.
yes, whenever you let me know, we'll make that happen.
Awesome.
That's
We
awesome.
will
That's coming back.
publicize the heck out of it here. And speaking of publicizing, welcome to Anti-Derivative Jill. Hello, Jill.
Hello there.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Great. We're in the midst of greatness.
Yeah, clearly. This is a really fantastic, fascinating content. for me.
Doesn't get a lot better than Don Ecker and Walter Bosley, does it?
No.
But everyone, please do subscribe to the Walter Bosley YouTube channel. I shortened it a little bit there so that people can actually type it in. Jill, we're gonna
It's also
spin the wheel here pretty soon.
It's LEY.
Oh, I apologize.
Well, I just, in case they're trying to type it in like that, they probably won't.
Right.
That's all. No big deal.
I never noticed that, and I hate it when people get my name wrong. So, my apologies, sir.
No apology necessary. My eye just caught that, and I thought I'd.
Yeah. Well, and I did go to your channel and get the actual URL and put it into bit.ly. So if people follow that, or just type in the Walter Bosley channel in YouTube, they'll find their way. But you are criminally undersubscribed as far as I'm concerned.
And I'm not monetized. Some people bring up because I have no problem with monetizing or people that are monetized. I had reached the threshold of views when they changed it. I now have to get an additional 100,000 views. They had changed it right as I reached the level, but then they started doing this thing where YouTube, whether you're monetized or not, they're just now putting ads on whatever they want to.
Oh, so not only that, but a friend of mine that I wasn't aware really followed my YouTube channel said that he was watching, a program in, after it was live, it was a replay. And he noticed while he was watching that I lost several thousand views all at once. And I'm not monetized either. I just celebrated my 500 subscriber milestone. And for small channels like ours, Walter, several thousand views just getting lopped off by YouTube doesn't help.
No,
help.
It's them just throwing ad because people assume, oh, you got ads on your thing, you're monetized, you must be making a bunch of money. It's like, I'm not monetized. They just do that now.
And the first check that you get after you're monetized is like $30.
Right. Yeah, I haven't seen one of those yet. So
It hasn't registered that the monetization is supposed to be for you, so they get one more check for themselves.
Yeah. And then, they get you coming and going. We don't need to talk about YouTube. That'll take us into hour 3 easily. And we're at 1:55 already. So, Jill, let's go ahead and make sure everyone's had a chance to get in that wants to get in. I'll put the URL back up there if I can find it. And
otherwise,
Jill,
the wheel is ready.
if you can find it before I do, feel free to highlight it.
Highlight what?
The giveaway URL.
Oh, right. Okay.
I just, for some reason, am not seeing it. Super Blubberpuss mentions, I saw a UFO around the U2000, the triangular TR3B. There we go. So this is the URL for anyone that wants to get into the giveaway, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So we've got about 3 minutes left. So if you're not on that wheel yet and you'd like to be eligible to win for the giveaways, please go to that URL and put in your name. That will put you on the wheel, and we'll give people, maybe another 30 seconds or so. And Darius Munchausen says to Mr. MH, Communist Party paper, it jumped on me, publicized the children's claims defending its decision. Its coverage was motivated by the golden rule of journalism. The reader must know everything. And Near M. Exandbear asks, have lunar waves already been discussed? What are lunar waves, Don?
Well, the only thing I'm aware of, the moon affects our oceans and the waves and what have you. I would presume it's that.
The tidal waves?
The tidal waves, yeah.
Yeah.
Or it could be, is that the thing, somebody saying that line that people claim swipes across the moon, and they claim
that might be it.
The moon's
that
not real because of this line or something.
It's a hologram, right?
Yeah, but it's a hologram. Maybe they've seen the Truman Show one too many times. I don't know.
Yeah, or one of the moon hoax movies. Actually, there was a really good moon hoax movie that was put out a few years ago about a couple of young guys that I think worked for the FBI. Stop me if you've heard this one before. But they are responsible on almost no notice for putting together something that makes it look like we went to the moon when we didn't. And it was a really fun movie. It was very funny. It was totally tongue-in-cheek. But it was a lot of fun to watch. Is that ringing the bell for either of you guys?
Nope.
Where can we see it?
If I could remember the name of it, I'd have to Google it, which I'm capable of doing. I apologize for the verbification of a noun. I hate it when people do that.
Oh, yeah. I hate it when they do it to myself.
Yeah, I hate it when I do it myself.
I don't mind it so much.
Let's see.
Although here lately I've been using DuckDuckGo more than Google.
Operation Avalanche, that's what it's called. A 2016 thriller / found footage movie. It's an American-Canadian found footage conspiracy thriller film directed by Matt Johnson, who co-wrote the film with Josh Bowles. I can highly recommend Operation Avalanche wherever you can find it. It says you can play the trailer on YouTube. You can watch it for free on Vudu, and that's all it says. So you can also buy the DVD from Amazon. Very fun movie. About an hour and a half. Anyway, let's go ahead and get back to our wheel. We'll bring it in, and that's everybody that's on the wheel. So the first spin, Jill, is going to be for the 3 signed UFO magazines, correct?
Yes.
All right, let's
it.
give that wheel a spin. Oh, Mr. MH, congratulations. A repeat winner, I must say.
Congratulations.
Mr. MH has really been winning a lot of stuff. And
Although he is on every show, to be fair.
It's almost like he's cheating, but of course there's no way to do that. So it's just coincidence. And we all know.
Maybe he's
no
remote viewing, Gil.
That's right. That's
Maybe.
what he's doing. There's no such thing as coincidence. Everything happens for a reason, right? Don?
That's what they tell me. I don't know, but that's what I hear.
I say everything happens for a reason. Causality. Which I think is very funny, but nobody else seems to. Okay.
What's that have to do with dark matter?
That it doesn't actually exist.
Okay.
They've
all
discovered they just didn't understand gravity very well. And suddenly dark energy and dark matter aren't a real thing.
Well, yeah,
Okay.
dark matter was just a thing that they used to explain why their math didn't work out perfect. So,
And now they've discovered some new form of gravity, and science has once again been tipped on its head. Okay,
I can't
so
wait to look
again,
forward to that.
I'm going to sort of take control here, and see if I can make myself the one that's in the big top here. So we've got 2 Into the Fringe t-shirts. One is on white, and one is on black with a separate design, and says Into the Fringe with Cardinal Sin. And on the back, of course, has the URL. So it's a thank you for supporting the channel. And when people come up and ask you what's Into the Fringe, then you can tell them it's my favorite paranormal / UFO show on YouTube. And that's a pretty good deal, I think. So let's go ahead and spin it again. We'll remove Mr. MH in case he wins again. And you'll get your choice of sizes. And, all right, Darius Munchausen. Congratulations, Darius.
Darius.
That's fantastic. And let's give it one more spin.
Okay, let me remove Darius.
Okay. And here we go. The anticipation's killing me.
Sherry.
Sherry!
Congratulations.
Congratulations. So, the 3 of you, please email me, and I will send your information on to Dawn. And the 2 of you that won t-shirts, please tell me whether you prefer black or white, and tell me what size you wear, and I'll get them off to you right away. And again, Dawn, thanks so much for not only being here, but signing some very rare UFO magazines. That's great. It's something.
Well, you're welcome. You're very welcome.
Something I really wish I could win, but since I'm the host, I don't get to win anything.
And it's a double treat here being with Walter, to be honest. Walter, it's been too long, my friend.
Yeah, likewise. It definitely, and I'm really glad your show's back, and I look forward to doing that with you again.
How long is it until your show will be back, or is it already
the
back?
19th
19th
of this month.
Oh my gosh! So, are you going to be doing that on weekdays or weekends or both?
Friday. It's going to be actually exactly the same time, same day as what it was with the last network. And
very cool.
Yeah. which I'm very happy about.
Yeah. Yeah. And I am too, because it's not on Thursday, so we can have you back. So Walter, I do want to have you back also. Don, I want to have you back. Hell, I'd like to have you back again, both, because it does promote some really interesting conversation. This has been a great show. I really want to thank everybody in the chat, and of course our guests, Don Ecker and Walter Bosley, for being here. And Jill, is there anything you want to say to take us out?
I don't know. Just keep watching the skies and pay attention.
There you go. Keep watching the skies. All right.
Okay, you'll send me those the contact info for the winners, right?
Absolutely. And Walter, let's be in touch about when you can be back on, because I'd like to have you back on and really do a deep dive into some of your research, your newest book, maybe do a giveaway of Secret Missions 5. Is that it?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the new one.
And we've promoted your YouTube channel. And Don, we've promoted the show that you're going to be doing again. But you can't tell us what network it is, or you'd have to kill us, right?
The X Network.
X Network?
The Unexplained, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Right.
With Race Hobbs.
Oh, with Race.
Right.
Has he left KGRA?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
I was just in a chat with him on Peter Robbins' show last week. Or somebody that was using his handle, anyway.
Yeah.
Because he didn't reply, and usually he does when I say, hi, Race. So, very interesting. You'll have to tell us more about that.
Okay.
But not now, because the show's over. So, thanks again. It's been wonderful having both of you. I'd love to have you back together and separately soon. And good luck on your endeavors in the future, both of you. And Jill, thank you so much for all your help. I really appreciate it. And Canadian Spider-Man and Darius Munchausen, who are also mods on my channel. Thanks for keeping us safe and helping out. It's much appreciated.
You're welcome.
So, for Anti-Derivative Jill, I don't know why I do Boris Karloff every time I say her name, but at least now she understands.
I thought that was Bela Lugosi.
No, that would be thank you, Anti-Derivative Jill.
So it turns out he can do that impression as well.
But every time I see her, I want to call her Auntie rather than Auntie. So it just turns to Anti-Derivative Jill. But for Jill and Walter Bosley and Don Ecker, it's Cardinal Sin, and we are out.